If you can't take a constructive feedback, there is a hole in the wall.
Because if you want this person to assimilate into the organization, the person has to be curious, has to be inquisitive.
And he asked me, once I am hired here, can you take my clothes and wash it and give it back to me? Or I can come and I can use the washing machine too.
Gender is a very, I would say, prevalent and relevant cause for us, and which is why most companies stick on to gender, because we're able to show progress there, Amit.
There is a great chance that we should look at these kind of individuals, these kind of freshers, and you never know what is that. They can be game changers for us.
You can be selling cutting edge technology, right? But at the end of the day, the person is going to sign that document. He's a human being.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Weekday Show. I'm your host, Amit Singh, founder and CEO of Weekday, a hiring marketplace where job seekers can 8x their chances of finding their perfect job, and recruiters can supercharge their productivity by accessing the largest database of talent in the country. We have 80% of white-collar workforce of India on our platform. Check out Weekday at weekday.works. Happy to present to you the Weekday Show, where recruitment leaders share actionable insights and answer the most common hiring FAQs, and explore the hiring process from both sides, and dissect real-life interview scenarios. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Weekday Show. I'm your host, Amit Singh, founder and CEO of Weekday. Happy to present to you the Weekday Show, where recruitment leaders share actionable insight and answer the most common hiring FAQs. Today, we have not one, but two guests. Both are from a company called Subex, which is one of the leading Indian MNCs. So it is one of the companies, Indian companies, which has expanded into other countries, and one of the very few Indian companies doing that. Uh, Asha is a CHRO at Subex, which stands for Chief Human Resource Officer. She takes care of all things HR. She was earlier at IBBO for 12 years as well. Welcome, Asha.
Thanks a lot, Amit. Thanks a lot for having us.
Thank you. Pleasure's all ours. Uh, and the second guest is Niveditha. She is the Director of HR and DEI at Subex. DEI stands for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. We'll talk more about what that means in due course of this podcast. She has been at Subex for around 14 years and making the switch from sales to HR, which also we'll talk about. Welcome, Niveditha.
Thank you so much, Amit.
Great to have both of you. So for this particular podcast, we'll have three sections. First will be a rapid fire round, where we'll ask quick and fun questions about hiring. The second will be more deep dive, where we talk about more about your journeys in a little bit more detail. And the third one will be my favorite section, which is hire or pass, where we give very direct interview scenarios that this particular persona comes to an interview. What do you do? So we'll start.
Yeah, sure.
All right. So let's get started with the rapid fire one. Can you recall a moment in an interview where your impression of the candidate completely changed with one answer? It could be good or bad, both.
Okay, let me take up to start with a good one. So there was this candidate who came in, and it was a mid-level, and on the resume, it was the resume was quite average. It was not a very high potential kind of a person, but it had come to the final round, and I was taking the interview, and one question what I asked was, what was your last failure in your present company, and how did you handle that failure? So I was obviously looking at the profile and the kind of interview what was going on for almost about 10-15 minutes. I thought the answer is going to be average, but when I started listening, it was very interesting. He started telling that he had a project failed in the present company, right? And how we actually made sure that nobody did a blame game, but rather than that, they just put it up as a a learning stage for all of them, put a data why it went wrong, and where did the the project failed, and where was the that crux, right? Where it actually failed, and how they could probably take that as a learning for their for further projects, right? So that was one answer, surely, gave me that, yes, this is the guy whom we are looking at. And probably after that, the impression changed, and further I went and hired that person.
What was different about that person? Like, for example, how would people normally answer this question, and what was different about this one?
See, generally, what happens is, people will start covering up things, right? They will not tell that there is a failure, and the accepting a project which I was leading is a failure is one of the biggest thing. You've solved half the problem already, and now putting up not doing a blame game. Generally what happens in organization, not all the organization, but let's take a part of organization where if something fails, everybody is out there to blame each other, right? This was because of this function, this was because of this department or something like that. But at this point, it can be a very novelty thing what he brought to me, where they immediately stopped that game of blaming each other, put up something together on the table, the data and why it went wrong, and they made that as a case study for their further this one. And also a quick win and quick failure, coming out of a quick failure. I think that is something which kind of caught my attention. And the guy was pretty smart, and the way he answered it, and I think that was a good one.
All right, great one. So, like, general tip for everyone: just be honest and don't play blame game. Definitely.
Yeah, be honest, and while you are coming into an organization, right? As an HR person, I don't want to bring people who already have troubles in these kind of characteristics, right? I need somebody, even your skills are not up to the mark, but these soft skills or the power skills help a lot to consolidate the organization as one. And you can probably growing further is faster rather than sitting and handling people problems, right?
Did you end up hiring that person?
Yes, I
Oh.
did, Amit.
All right. Moving on to the next one. Have you ever taken a bet on a candidate completely based on gut instinct, despite them not being a good fit on paper? And how did that turn out?
Absolutely, Amit. In about, I would have interviewed or met up with at least 10,000 people in my entire career, because recruitment is very close to my heart, and I enjoy meeting new people. And there are several instances of this. One was, there was this guy, who was 40% or something in his engineering. He had got 40% in his engineering, and he had worked in some other company, and he had come, right? And I was interviewing him, and something hit me very strong, the way he was very clear about the organization where I was working. He had done a very good study of the organization, and he knew the JD, and he knew what are the things what he has to actually spell out, right? The smartness, right? And you also need smart people, right? You just can't go anywhere and talk anything. So overall, the kind of impression what he brought in was I was not very interested in engineering, and later on I picked up, right? That was one guy. And today, I don't want to name the person, but he's a CTO in a very very big technology driven organization. There was another lady, quick one, another lady who came in. She was from a retail background and was a marketing person. Now I was hiring for a technology company, right? And the resume surely was not appealing when I saw it, but I wanted to somehow talk to this person, because few things were quite interesting, her innovation and what all she did in that previous company. So when she came in, I surely got the potential was there in the candidate, and she was very much interested to learn, and she had made a thorough study of the JD of what we had presented. Now she gave me more than about her experience. She gave me a path how she's going to actually upgrade herself to what we are looking at. That was a fantabulous thing for me, actually. So I think there are I can go on, so I've
So you're a strong believer in gut feeling and not really following.
Not necessary. It depends. It's situational, right? Like, sometimes we go for an entrepreneur. The role requires that kind of a person, right? Or we go for a person who has worked in a very structural setup because that role requires. It depends, right? I can't tell, like, I'm fully on a gut or a gut feeling. I make my hiring, or I only go through the resume and this one. It depends on situation to situation, what kind of organization you are hiring and what kind of a hiring manager is there, how much of openness is there. So these are all the factors what we look at, Amit.
All right, the next one. Have you ever had a strong candidate completely bomb a simple question? And what question is that generally?
Yes, many of them, Amit.
Okay.
Many.
So let's start one by one.
Yeah, so like, every time when I get an interview from my team, or probably when I was an individual contributor also, I just take about 5 to 10 minutes first to look into the profile and then make my notes, right? Because everything is already given in the resume. You don't need to go on for 1 hour, this one. So some things which I feel like, they would have told. Which is little eye catchy. So I probably make a note of it and only ask those things, right? So there was this particular person whom I met. This was some time back, and I asked one very simple question: that how do you take a constructive feedback? Right now, uh, people are and these are like, not necessary the junior folks. This can be in the managerial role and other things. Right now, uh, taking a constructive feedback is extremely important in any scenarios, according to me. It can be a family, it can be an organization, it can be your own setup, anything, right? If you can't take a constructive feedback, there is a hole in the wall, seriously, right? So I asked this, and the person started slowly kind of like, getting away from the question. And I could make out that he was not comfortable, right? And he started covering up himself and, like, started telling that the other person was not right and other things. And this was, mind you and me, it was for a senior person. Now, when we talk for a senior, when we interview for a senior person, it's extremely important that, like, they take a constructive feedback very well and act upon that, or else there can be serious issues within the organization. So that was one thing which I felt like, they did not the person did not take the question well, and I was not at all convinced, right? And there are many more like this, like, it's just not one or two, like, many of it. Something which I remember is, for me, taking a feedback and working on that is extremely important in whatever level you are. So I respect that quality a lot.
How do you ask this question? For example, if I'm asked like how do you take responsibility, I would take it well. But do you ask for like
No, I had a prelude for my question, because, like, that is just yes or no, right? Monosyllabic. How do you take a feedback? Yeah, I take it very well. So, like, I asked what was the one project which failed in one of the this one, and what was the feedback from other departments, other people, right? So that, like, and where did you feel you went wrong? Right. So that kind of triggered off, and, like, he started telling that the problem was somewhere else, and, like, it came everything on their team, and they were not ready to pick up that kind of a feedback, right? And, like, even probably if it is, like, you can make out a characteristic of a person, like, whether he belonged to the group or he's working silo. So that was the kind of a thing what I felt at that point. And there are many like this, right?
I think like one takeaway here is like one of the general red flags is when people start hiding stuff or keeping like not really sharing it, and like the person who's interviewing is smart enough that they will figure it out that
So, Amit, probably more than that, I feel when you get defensive.
ah, okay.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's fine, right? I can show my vulnerabilities. It's nothing wrong, right? Yeah, it was a issue which we did. The code was not fixed, or maybe the code was not tested, but we left it to production. Whatever it is, right? But when I start becoming defensive about me, territorial, right? That is when is the issue. right?
Yeah.
And a smart recruiter or a smart interviewer will surely find out. You don't even need to be smart, the experience itself teaches you.
And like this is the reason why we do such kind of interviews, is because like generally people consider that when they're coming to an interview they have to they have to appear perfect. So
Yeah.
that's the impression that everybody has, and the reason why we're doing this is because the people, like generally most of the people that who are listening to this would not have interacted a lot with people who like recruiters or people who would be interviewing them. So, and this is great that you, like, it's okay to not be perfect, it's okay to show your vulnerabilities.
Yeah.
And while Asha was speaking, there was one incident that's come to my mind, if I can take just
Yeah.
about a couple of seconds, right? I think this was not a, seasoned person who'd come in for the interview. I think fairly junior role, but I think the conversation was going on really, really well. And, we concluded, and I posed a question. Do you have a question? Do you want to know more about the role? Do you want to know more about the company, about the culture? And this person's like, no, which means the aspect of wanting to know more about the role, the company, the people, and the culture was not really coming out strongly. I think this is very, very important for somebody that you want to hire, because if you want this person to assimilate into the organization, the person has to be curious, has to be inquisitive. So this was something that just came to my mind
People
was
generally bomb this
when
that they don't
Asha,
have
yeah,
interesting questions to ask.
questions, yes, yeah.
Okay.
So just adding to that, Amit, there was this person who was a fresher. Okay, I mean, 1 year he had an experience, and he came to give an interview, and I was with the previous company, right, and quite a smart guy, and less. He used to speak very less, and I was trying to probe and talk to him and all, and I asked. Suddenly, while we were talking, suddenly he told, "Do you have a washing machine?" So, where I told, in the office, I told, we had a small setup, right? And it was an inception days, we were about 60, 70 offers, literally sitting down and eating, that kind of,
Yeah.
you would know it
Yeah.
more
Yeah.
than me,
Yeah.
right? And one of the best golden period, according to me. So the guy suddenly asked, "Do you have a washing machine?" I told, where do you want the washing machine? No, no, in your house, he asked. I told, yeah, I do have at home. So he told, see, actually, I'm a bachelor. I'm staying at home. The problem is, I don't have any, they call dobis, right? Somebody
Yeah.
who can, or I don't have that kind of a money to get a servant and get my clothes washed. Can you just help me with, and I'm not joking. Trust you and me when I say this. He did tell this, and that guy, wherever he's sitting, he would be laughing at this, that I've come out with this. And he asked me, "Can you take, once I am hired here, can you take my clothes and wash it and give it back to me?
Wow.
Or I can come and I can use the washing machine too." Okay.
Oh my
So,
God.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I hired him, right? I hired him. I mean, what's wrong in that? Tell me. He has an issue. He's coming back to me, and that's not
Okay.
a big setup, right? So there are many instances
Did
like
he
this.
end up using the
And
washing machine?
uh, me.
He did?
No,
Oh, he
we
didn't.
paid him so that he can have a good
Oh.
servant and get it. No, but there are thousands of instances like this. See, bringing out your vulnerabilities doesn't mean that people will get offended. Bring your real self. At least in few areas, bring your real self. It's absolutely fine to look at people's vulnerability, and that is what actually sells and works, right?
Oh, okay. Okay, that's an interesting. That's a first for me. All right. Moving on. What's the most useless skill listed on a resume that you have ever seen?
Okay, so there's another funny incident on this. There was this person who came, and on the resume there was one very funny skill, and I just looked at it and I asked, what apart from dancing and singing or watching TV, what is that you like? I mean, what is that one extra skill? What you think? And it was listed in the. So the person told, "I know how to do omelette." Okay, I know how to boil an omelette. Okay, so culinary skills, everything is fine. But for a software engineer who comes,
Oh, it's
so
listed on the resume as well.
yeah, it's very much clearly listed. So that is one, and lot many other things especially present scenario, the relevance is your technology and other things. What right? People write, we know how to use a fax machine or those kind of things, right? Or maybe computer expert. So I feel today it. How will you work without a basic technology and all? Even somebody writing basic computers, probably that is a waste of this one.
A lot of people write Microsoft Word.
My
Yeah. Yeah.
master in Excel. So those kind of things are something yes, it is relevant to different industry, but if they come to me and give me that profile for my organization, those are something which you just have to have back of your head, right? So those are something. But omelette, I know how to make an omelette, was little funny for me. And and the person also first the person asked me whether I'm a vegetarian or non-vegetarian. I told him I'm a non-vegetarian, and I can make excellent omelette is what came out. And yeah, it was a good laugh. I can't tell that's useless, but it's relevant to the
Yeah.
question what you asked me.
And Niveditha, what's the most useless skill you have seen?
Taking away the glamour from Asha, slightly more boring thing. I think people talk about problem solving. People talk about team collaboration and things like that. I think I find it very cliched to put it on the resume, because unless you're able to demonstrate, those are just words for me. So in an interview, it's very important while you have it on the resume. I think it's important for the person to demonstrate how you were able to do all of this, right? Otherwise, these are just words. Sorry, Asha, not as interesting or as your stories, but cliched experiences
But I think
that
very actionable for people as well, right?
very
Because a lot of
actionable.
people just generally feel that, okay,
Yeah,
I'll write it
and
down.
with ChatGPT out there now, you
Yeah.
pick up stuff from ChatGPT without understanding what it really means, and you're not able to really corroborate when you're having a conversation. That I think is a major miss from my side.
And specifically because, like, within a resume, there is only very little real estate available to you to mention things.
Absolutely, absolutely, yes, absolutely.
Okay, all right. Moving on. Uh, what interview question do you find the most overrated, which people generally ask in interviews?
I think I've not had as many interviews as Asha's had, but I think I've heard while sitting in a panel, I've heard people asking, where do you see yourself in the next, let's say, 5 years, 10 years? And I've had people responding saying, um, let's say, now I'm staying in Jayanagar, maybe next I would like to stay in some apartment, some things like that. There have been instances like that. But I think, with times changing, you have to ask relevant questions.
Mm.
I think these are some passe questions now. You can't really ask those questions. So I find such questions questionable at this point in time. Yeah.
So I will just extend that. So that's the most boring question for me also. How do you see it? I don't know what's going to happen next month. And
Yeah.
please
True.
give me a break on 5 years, right? So probably the question which we could ask at that point, right? Not to make it boring and not to make it difficult for a person. I've heard so many people telling that I would like to be in your position, or I would like to be a CEO of this company in next 5 years and other things, right? So beautiful thought, beautiful dreams, and beautiful thought process, right? But still, I would like to understand if a person is experienced, what is that last thing what he did which made him and his team proud, right? Or probably what is that the failure what happened in his last project, and how did he kind of pick that pieces up and made it as a learning, this one, right? Or probably I will ask him what is that last three things which is made his entire team and him to collaborate and work together. So these are the kind of things is something which I would like to ask a person rather than asking how do you see yourself. I think we should just ask everybody to stop asking that question, if
Yeah,
you
that's
ask me,
that's basically
Amit.
what we did right now.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right. Okay, the last one. This for Nivedita. Are current diversity practices followed by corporates overly indexed on gender demographics and not other demographics which are highly relevant in India, in a country like India, like caste, religion, etc. as well?
Honestly, I believe yes. And I'll tell you why. I think when an organization starts on a DI journey, right? We were also very excited when we started off at Subex. We were also very excited. We want to do this, we want to do that, talk about LGBTQ and so on and so forth. It's great to be excited. But when the rubber hits the road, only you will understand it's so much more difficult. So if you really want to make an impact, show progress, I think pick up one strand, let's say from a diversity standpoint. And gender is a very, I would say, prevalent and relevant cause for us, and which is why most companies stick on to gender, because we're able to show progress there, Amit. Right? Show progress, make the movement, create impact, and that's when you're able to justify from a business angle also. See, tomorrow if I have to go back and talk to the business and my CEO, my sponsor, or let's say Asha as a CHRO, saying, hey, you know what, I'm doing this now, I want to do that also, which means I need more budget and more money, she will ask me saying, show me the impact, right? Show me tangible results first here, and that's when we will, let's say, approve. So I think for some of these elements, gender becomes really, really important and easy, relatively easy, if I might add, right, for us to move forward and show impact. So that's how I think companies are talking about and doing more around gender demographics. And if you hear some of the veterans in this area, I think that's what even they say. They may not really propagate on gender per se, but they would say pick one area where you can show impact. And I think some of the mainstream industries, gender is a big demographic.
But if
Having
let's
said,
say a company has to make progress on inclusion, let's say towards caste or religion as well, what would they do? Like, how would they approach it?
just be inclusive. Just be inclusive, right? I think from a compliance standpoint also, while organizations have to capture some elements of, let's say, caste and religion, we don't really take affirmative actions towards these strands, right? I think here, more than, let's say, diversity point of view, I think we have to talk about inclusion. What are you doing for them to feel included? What are you doing for this segment of people to feel belonged? That's when you're creating the employee engagement and employee experience, right? I think inclusion cuts across all strands of diversity: gender, LGBTQ, veterans, PWDs, whatever, right? I think the focus of the matter right now in the current scenario in across the industries, I would say personally, is that you focus on inclusion, right? You can hire people left, right, center, but are you creating that ecosystem for them to thrive and grow? I think that's the most important thing
Yeah,
for
and
us.
that would be the starting point
that
for.
that becomes absolutely important. Then you can pick up anybody, right, Amit? I was seeing the other day some company doing a drive, hire women returnees, hire people from LGBTQ community, right? Hire veterans, hire PWD. So these are companies, this company I know about. This company has really established, how they are creating an inclusive workplace. You can hire anybody, that is set, your base, your foundation is set, you can hire anybody. So I think that's what we'll have to really focus on, rather than, let's say, okay, which strand of diversity will pick up.
Hmm, got it. All right. On that note, let's we conclude with the rapid fire round. Let's move on to hire or pass, where I'll give you certain scenarios of a person who's coming to interview. Is that hire or pass? Hire means like yes, or pass means like reject.
Okay.
All right. So the first is hire or pass, the silent achiever. So a candidate who performed exceptionally well in the interview, but was like fairly reserved and did not even have questions when you asked like, okay, do you have any questions? He did not ask any questions, but did very well in the interview. Is that a hire or pass? You
Hi.
touched upon it a little bit.
Yes, I did, but now I'm going to give a conflicting answer. I would probably hire.
Okay. Why?
Again, we don't know why the person has been reserved, and I don't want to be assuming something or have a bias, right? So I want to give the benefit of doubt. If the person has demonstrated good competencies, I think I will take a chance and hire the person.
And while there'll be on the curiosity front or ability to sort of learn more front, there'll be a question mark. That's
Well, no. So not asking question doesn't necessarily always mean that the person is not curious, right? I think this is a bias that I think we sometimes seem to have. Curiosity definitely comes in many other ways. So the person may be curious, but if the person demonstrate that they're not curious and not adding value, that's a different story, right? But here I'm giving the person the benefit of doubt. I've spoken to the person, comes across as a strong professional in whatever they do, but the curiosity level from that element, or not having spoken much, or this slight bit of reservedness, I'd still hire the person.
okay. All right. Hire or pass a serial entrepreneur. So a candidate who has had multiple startups but has only worked at startups. So has not really worked at a large sort of corporate setup where there's like structure to everything. Uh, is that a red flag, or is that sort of a green flag for you?
So that is a hire for me, for sure. But I have my reservations on a couple of things. One is the hire is because the person is surely, has looked at every part of a business, starting from setting up, the idea to the final product, right? And also going to the customer, B2B, B2C, everything he is seen. Right. And I would surely look at an entrepreneur kind of a background with some experience in a corporate also. Sometimes it may not work because the person is not always want to work in a structural environment or a hierarchical
And
environment,
also
or a
pace of work.
Yeah.
yeah, the pace of work, right? There is a, so maybe that can be passed, but from my side generally it is higher.
You would still want to take a chance on that.
Yes.
All right. The next one, hire or pass, diversity training reluctant. So someone, or even soft skill training reluctant. So someone who openly shows reluctance to attending these sessions and ridicules them in informal setting. Not like that they just don't believe in it. They just think, okay, I know all this stuff. Why do I need to go through this? Is that a hire or pass?
She will take them and leave them outside and come off.
No,
Niveditha,
no,
very
pass.
clear.
See, I think for me, if you tell me I don't know, right? I'm doing this as a mistake. I don't know. I would still give you that benefit. I will train you, sit, put the whole thing down your throat. But if you don't have the self-awareness, if you're not willing to have that awareness, learn about it, openness, having that mindset of, let's say, okay, let me hear. I think that for me is a major, major red flag. So that for me is a major
And
one.
do you come across people like these often?
Many people, Amit, many people, both at a professional capacity and personally outside. I think you will find a lot of people like this, that who believe that they know everything and all of this is just uh, nonsense. Yeah, yeah.
All right. Moving on to the next one. Hire or pass, the skill mismatch candidate. So someone who has very good soft skills, is a cultural fit also, but lacks some of the technical skills required for the
That's a
job.
higher for me, Amit. And I don't believe in cultural fitment. I believe in cultural addition,
Can
right?
you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, basically, why should I take same kind of people into an organization? There is 20 people sitting out there, right? Everybody is same. Why would I want, then where is my diversity? Where's my equity? Where's my inclusion? So I would probably like to look at a cultural addition, a person who's a little different, who can come in, add to what we are looking at, or look at things different perspective, give a different perspective. So I don't believe in cultural fitment. I believe in more of cultural addition, and this is surely a higher for me, because the person, I look at the potential, whether he has a growth potential, and it's fine if he is not totally up to, basically we look at 80-85% match on any requirement, right? So it is absolutely fine even if it's a 10% less for me, so that if in case he has the potential and if he's got the interest to make sure he learns and updates himself, then I think it's a higher from my side.
All right. Uh, it's a related one, but different. Like hire or pass, the overly ambitious newcomer. So someone who has less experience, but is very ambitious and wants like rapid career progression, wants to like sort of get promoted. But while that is commendable, but the company that is working so there will be realistic chances of them getting promoted. There are realistic chances of them like developing in their career. Is that a higher or pass?
Higher. Hands down higher from my side, because the person is already excited about what he wants to do, right? And
And
he's
while the expectation might not meet in
not
ground reality.
necessary. It is not necessary, Amit, that every time the requirement has to be 100% match. It's absolutely fine. I've seen people who are in HR who have moved to sales, people who are in sales who have moved to HR. There is no match at all, right? But the interest, right, the potential and the passion what they show while they are learning, I think there is a great chance that we should look at these kind of individuals, these kind of freshers, and you never know what is that. They can be game changers for us, right? So it's a higher for me.
And for high performers, if I might add, you don't need to follow a set path. You create opportunities for them, right? And if they are helping the company, propelling the company in the growth path, why not? I think you should identify such people, create those bespoke opportunities, let them grow. Because if they are growing, the company is growing, we are growing. So I concur with Asha. I think it is important for us to create this, because also you're creating the healthy environment of competition within the organization, right?
And this also talks to the point that she mentioned about that you can make exceptions to the policy, like you
Absolutely,
don't have to follow
absolutely,
policy to the
absolutely,
T.
yes. So I
And
think yes,
every organization,
station.
I have taken calls like this. Every single
Yeah.
organization have gone. I've taken call, given an exception, made sure we brought those kind of people. They are not even proper match, but the skill sets is not matching, but the kind of potential what they show, right? It is there that they can be the game changers.
Are you looking for a job? You can 8x your chances of getting one by using Weekday. How 8x? By doubling the chances on three fronts: referrals, customizing your resume, and applying to double the jobs. Weekday can help you on all three fronts. Did you know that you can double your chances of getting a job by asking referrals? You can do that via Weekday by just one click, where people can give referrals to the existing companies via the Weekday platform. The second one is customizing your resume for every role. Did you know that 60% of the applicants of a job are never seen by a human recruiter? You can double your chances by customizing your resume based on every job posted. Well, it's not feasible to do that. You can do that via AI. So, Weekdays Chrome extension allows you to customize your resume for any job. The third front is applying to double the jobs. Imagine if there was an easy apply on every careers job posted everywhere. What we allow via front end automations is that you can just click once and no need to fill multiple long forms on every careers page. Give that information to us once and utilize it everywhere else. All right, on that note, let's move on to the deep dive section. So let's talk a little bit about your journeys and specifically what attracted you towards HR, both of you, and like how your journey has been within specific HR, and what were your initial ideas of what HR would be and how did it turn out to be?
After you, I've been
Sure,
talking.
sure. Okay, so uh, HR is not my. I don't come from it from an academic standpoint, right? So I was hired at Subex to manage the demand generation team, manage, build, grow the demand generation team. I came on board, one thing led to another. There were a lot of things that kept getting added to my portfolio. And here I am, I think, after about 7, 8 years, having done a whole lot of things. I managed the inside sales function of the sales engine. I did the bid management function. I managed partners. I managed the sales operations functions. And our previous CHRO, Mohan Sitaram, who I give the credit to for bringing me into HR. So he talked me down once, one of these days in a similar setup, over a coffee. He's like, hey, you know what? You've seen everything on the other side of business. Do you want to come on this side of business and see what you can do for people? HR was never on my cup of tea, right? We've never talked about it. And that's when it really hit me. So I understand the entire sales process from end to end, from, let's say, how do you identify leads to how do you close, and the whole thing that goes into it. And while that is happening, how it is impacting engineering, how it is impacting services, how is it impacting delivery, and so on and so forth. Now, for all of that to happen, what is the common denominator? People. Right. So while I've understood that, is there some impact that I can create for the people element? Was a conversation that he picked up with me, and I thought, why not give it a shot? I don't want a I don't want an opportunity where I go back and see, you know what, I should have done that. Now, in hindsight, when I look back, it's about 7, 8 years now, Amit. I think that was one of the best decisions that I've taken. I've had my lows, I've had my highs, but I think that's how the journey has transitioned for me. And today, I think it's been a very rewarding experience for me, having moved from what I was doing previously to what I'm doing now.
Asha?
So there was my grandmother's place, that's in Chikmagalur, and I used to be regularly going in all my summer holidays when I was young. So I had a huge group of cousins. So now, like, with about 15 of us, there used to be a lot of fights. So I was the kind of, like, person who arbitrator, right? Like, where I used to be in center and make sure that they all get peace. So two groups or three groups fighting, and, like, I used to generally make peace with them. And that slowly, and this started when I was in fifth or sixth standard, kind of a thing. And, like, slowly, like, I started realizing that, like, oh, I can make peace with people. I can, like, conflict management, right? We don't know that word at that time. That time it was just that, like, I was like one, they were all of my fans, and I was the eldest. And, like, so slowly I started growing, uh, becoming aware that, like, conflict resolution or listening patiently or understanding people's problems, like, dealing any kind of a problem with a little bit of empathy, right? So these were the things which I got aware when I finished my college, like, and understood that this is something which I would like to get in. So that time, boyfriend, who's my husband now, he started motivating me a lot to get into the HR field. And, like, see, human resource, there's something which is, like, doing really well now. And a lot of people thought I might become a lawyer for what I was, right? So my friend, he started telling me that I think you would really fit into this human resources, right? And I started with a small consultancy, and I was that's why, like, recruitment. When I tell I love recruitment, I started with a small consultancy. So I was a recruiter. I was a sole recruiter there, and then I slowly went into another company which was about 150 people, and I was a junior HR person, and I was handling recruitment, this both of it. And then when I got into Go Ibibo, that's when I started really realizing, like, the potential, and I got a lot of respect, a lot of love, and I was one of the favorite person in Go Ibibo, like, among the folks, like, out there. And I grew the company also along with them. I also grew. So that's the entire journey, right? Like, what I took. So if you ask me, like, go back to 1.5 decade, and, like, you get a chance to become something else, I probably, as what Niveditha told, I would, like, never do that. I would probably tell, yes, I want to be in human resources. Like, that's the kind of passion what I've grown for human resources to.
But like what you talk about, like characteristics, is that yes, it with the advantage of hindsight that now you know that those are the characteristics that would be helpful
It was
in an HR
never,
field.
no, Amit.
You
I never planned anything. In fact, until I finished my college, I was not even knowing, like, what I'm going to do. And every person in my family had a different game for me. Like, they had planned something. My dad wanted me to become an IAS officer, my mom, IPS officer. My brothers thought, like, you just finish your college and go get married and go out of the house. So everybody had different this one. That's when, like, as I told you, my husband, like, in college, like, we became friends. So that's when he started telling that, like, you are more of a person who has the conflict management, or, like, you listen whenever somebody comes to you, and you talk well, and you have a lot of patience, right? All these things can actually, like, add up to what a human resources does, right? So that's when I started thinking, and I did my degree from Joseph's on human resource, and I took it very seriously and started pursuing it.
And that is like interestingly is a good framework to like whenever someone is deciding the career, like what are others telling you you are good at and what
Yeah, I mean,
not really think that what you think you are good at.
yeah. And he was the closest person to my heart, and I surely believed what he told. And today, I surely thank him for this kind of a direction what he gave at that time.
And Nivita, like for you, uh, when you made the switch from sales to HR, like with the sales, there is a different kind of satisfaction you get, like when you're hitting targets. How is it different from sales to now when you're an HR director?
Very interesting question that you ask, Amit. But I would say, uh, see, both sales and people function, right? Um, like again, I told you, the common denominator are people. You're selling to people in a sales function. You may be selling anything, right? In the HR people function also, in some form, you're selling something to people, right? I think the similarity that you're asking me is how you can identify what it is that the person wants. You're selling something. It may be a product, but how can that, let's say, add value to the buyer? That I apply to the people function as well, because I think that's the most important thing. And what Asha, I think, spoke about empathy. I think most important thing is empathy. You can be a salesperson for crying out loud, but if you don't understand, if you don't empathize with your customer, there's only so much more sales that you're going to make, right? The same thing applies to people here. When you're dealing as an HR professional, as a people professional, is that if you don't empathize with the person, and if you don't really think about what do they want, how can I create an employee experience for them, that's how it's going to be. So very very similar. You're dealing with human beings. At the end of the day, you can be selling cutting edge technology, right? But at the end of the day, the person is going to sign that document. He's a human being, and here as well we're talking about human beings. So I think that's
But
a
which
very
one's
very
harder?
no, no, don't get me started on that, because I think both have its own advantages. I mean, if you don't meet your numbers, you're out of the gate, in a sales profession. But here, there are a lot of tangible and intangible outcomes that can come, right? Attrition come in your employee engagement, your employee experience, leading up to business outcomes. If you don't have a great employee experience and engaged employees, I think that's going to really really ruin your image as a company. Your business outcomes won't come in, and so on and so forth. So I think tangibly both have similar, I would say, talwar on the neck, and both are equally difficult. But the beauty is that you're talking to people. I think that's I think we should not forget about that.
All right. So the next question is for Ash. So basically, the idea of this particular podcast is to educate more people about what happens behind the scenes when they apply. So let's take an example. I am, let's say, applying. I see a careers page or like a posting on LinkedIn, Naukri, any other post. I click on apply. After I do click on apply, what exactly happens behind the scenes? How will that resume go to different people? What exactly is the process that gets followed before I get a call from like an interview?
Okay, so let me just quickly give you a insight on what happens at Subex. So there is a requirement which comes to us, first of all, and from a hiring manager. There's a JD which is a ready JD which comes to the recruiter, and we look into that and we understand what is it, and we again connect with the hiring manager to make sure that if there are some kind of things what he has left for, mentioning on the JD, so we collect that, and we come back and we start making the JD more professional, which is actually a Subex based JD, and then we put it out on the social media. It can be different job boards or it can be on the social media. And we also make sure that we internally send the job requirements, because if in case we can get internally, people refer to that, it's more better for us, right? And you're building your own group, you're building your own right? The internal people bringing. So, for that matter, there is about 16% of internal references what we have actually, started getting. 16% we have converted last year.
What is the general number like people in other companies would have?
See, that depends on companies to companies. There are 8%, there are 6%, there is also 20%, there's also 25%. Depends on the, on your NPS, in fact, right?
And how much you want to prioritize?
See, today it's 16%. I mean, my dream is at least until 25%, right? That shows your NPS, right? Net Promoter Score. What is your question? Would you be able to refer your friend to the organization? So, if I'm going to tell yes, it means that I'm happy with the company, I'm happy with my manager, I'm happy with the entire setup, I'm happy with the work what I'm getting, and I'm also happy with the kind of growth what I'm getting with the salary. Right, so this is the entire thing. What
A
an
lot of things that go behind being
yeah, I
happy.
mean,
Yeah.
so you are a happy employee. So that's what it shows. If I am going to refer my friend, or else a friend comes and gives me gali, right? So in that way, we float the requirements, and on an average, Amit, from employees, we get about 100 to 150 profiles, right? From the job boards, we get few thousands. It can be LinkedIn, it can be Naukri, it can be Indeed, it can be any of it,
This
right?
for one opening.
One opening we get,
Okay.
depending on
Yeah.
for example, a business consulting, right? That is for a telco domain. I would just take one example. So as a recruiter, I would be looking at, when I tell business consulting, I would look at a person who is well experienced in telco, and who is actually had some good customer interaction, somebody who understands what customer requires, somebody who has done whiteboarding with the customer, somebody who is actually understands what are the kind of advices he needs to give a customer. For example, if there is a revenue leakage, how do you mitigate a revenue leakage? Or probably something like how do you make cost optimization, right? These are the kind of things what a consulting person does, business consulting. And also he comes back and also explains what is that a customer requires, right? This is my requirement. And finally, we take the profile, we go to the we shortlist, because my entire recruitment team is actually proper technical people, right? Now they shortlist and they go to the hiring manager. And
Let's step back a little. So let's say there was an opening. There is like 150 odd referral resumes. There are a couple of thousand from all the like different wherever it is posted. It's like all the job boards. You've gotten these many applicants. Now, each like where is every resume looked by a human recruiter, or is there a level of filtering that happens? And if that happens, what can an applicant do to make sure that they get flagged?
see, that is probably that is the ideal scenario, and what's happening with a lot of other companies, right? You get 100 profiles today, you're getting 100 profiles tomorrow, you're going to get 1,000 profiles. It's very difficult actually, to shortlist these profiles. So obviously, at this point, because we're not using anything that technical, we get everything from the job sites. We go through the
Go
profiles.
through everyone.
Now,
Okay.
keywords are something what we use for every profile. We look at 5 to 6 keywords, right? And in that it's very easy for making sure that they check that, and if in
And
case
let's
we
take an
don't get.
example. Like for example, this particular role you talked about. What would be those keywords?
Yeah,
What are
the
those words generally like?
so probably something customer interaction, right? Mitigating, as I told you, mitigating your revenue leakages, cost optimization, and how well the communication is also of a person, right? How well he has understood the entire platform, right? How well he is actually he has to be technical in
Yeah.
telco, right? These are the kind of things what we look at for a business
Mhm.
consultant
And that
person.
person
And
should mention that in the resume as well.
yeah, obviously it will be there. right? And the experience also varies. So it can be different from a junior, it can be different for a mid manager or a senior person, depends on the experience and what kind of projects he has worked, what kind of clients he has worked, right? And what kind of locations he has worked. So there's huge things, Amit. It's just not one thing. So probably for this requirement what I'm talking, you won't get too many profiles also. It never crosses a 10 or 15 profiles, because there are very few. It's a niche skill. Very few people out there in the market, right? And they looking into the and very few will be looking out, right? So you get about 10 profiles, pretty easy to go through this one. Yeah, for Java and other requirements it would be a huge task, because there'll be hundreds of this, and there'll be also a lot of profiles which are also not relevant.
So, like, the reason why I asked this is because a lot of times people think, which is a lot of advice out there, is that make your resume as short as possible. There's very little time that a person will go through
Very
the.
true.
But
Very
that
true.
means that don't skip out on the keywords as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
please keep the keywords, and any recruiter for that matter, the attention span to see a profile is not more than 12 to 15 seconds,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
Put your what that is why it's very, very important to first go through the JD, what you want to apply for, and study that well, study the industry, the company. That is extremely important for a person if you are applying for that role, right? And it
But
becomes very
do you think it
easy.
is possible? For example, like for this particular role, you're thinking there's thousands of applicants. So that basically means there's only one person out of those thousands is going to get selected. If the selection rate is that low, is it possible for someone to just like, because then it becomes a volume game, right? Like, because there's what 0.001 probability that.
That is where we probably have to bring in the AI based tools, recruitment tools, ATS, all these things, right? They're all going to be helpful actually. And we also use Darwin box at this point, right? There is a certain scrutiny what it does and gives to us, right? And few internal references and other things, we'll have to sit and look at it.
Okay, all right. Moving.
And
Yeah.
Amit, also your job sites also give a proper scrutiny and give you,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
That also is there.
Okay, got it. All right. Moving on. Let's talk about DEI a little, Nivedita. Just explain that. What exactly does that mean? I think you touched upon it a little bit earlier, but what exactly is DEI? Why is it important? And what are the actionable things that people can do? Like, not really like, for example, decision makers, but people can do to just make sure that they are more inclusive in their workplace.
Not get into jargons, very, very simply, so that everybody, understands. I think uh, DEI is about having different people, differences, right? It's all about bringing in the differences, um, giving them equal and equitable opportunities, and creating a workplace.
What exactly does equitable opportunity mean? Can you explain that?
Right. Now, let's say, for example, a very crude example. We have, let's say, 3 cups of coffee here, but Amit prefers coffee,
Mhm.
Asha prefers tea, right? Uh, but, everybody talks about giving equal opportunities. From that sense, I will say, no, there is coffee only. You also have coffee, you also have coffee, Asha. Equitable opportunity is that I understand what Asha wants. I understand what Amit wants, right? And I will give Amit what Amit wants. I'll give Amit coffee and I will give Amit tea. Very, very crude example so that everybody understands. So I think it's very important for us to understand and create these equitable opportunities. And the most important thing which underlines and creates that horizontal layer for everything is that how are you creating an inclusive organization for people to bring in the vulnerable self, for people to be authentic, for people to not have fear of, let's say, talking, sharing ideas, because all of this, has a real and a tangible impact to business, right? If you're able to create a different ecosystem, giving them equal opportunities, creating an inclusive environment, you're creating highly engaged, highly employee, I would say resilient people. People are willing to put in that discretionary effort because you're feeling more belong to the organization, more connected to the organization. So I think it's about just simple, right? I appreciate the differences that, let's say, Amit and Asha brings into the table. I allow them to speak, right? Most important thing, which means you're giving them the opportunity. And when and how you want opportunities, I create those avenues for you. So in simple terms, this is all about it, Amit, right? No jargons, putting the jargons aside. This is, in a simple terms, what DI really stands for.
Okay. And what can individuals do to make their workplace more inclusive or more equitable?
Right. You hear a lot of people saying that, DEI agenda has to be from top down, which is very essential and very crucial for it to happen, right? But I think the real impact happens at the middle layer, at the people layer, right? The manager layer, which means that, and manager and at the grassroots level, right? So while the managers, the leaders are sitting and creating these policies and programs for everything to happen, if I am being accepting of you, of who you are, that's really an opportunity for every individual to demonstrate inclusion. So I think that's the basic crux of it. You have your differences, but accept those differences, agree to disagree, but also agree that there's a beautiful point of view that, let's say, maybe an Asha is bringing to the table, or Amit is bringing to the table, and that's how you're creating an inclusive organization. So in simple terms, just be acceptful of who the other person is.
So the last question in this section, like what advice would each of you give to early career recruiters, early people who want to sort of become like you? What advice would you give to them?
So one thing that really comes to my mind, and I'm bringing this again from a DI element, right? Um, See, I think we have this thing in the industry saying, if a candidate doesn't have to be from a women pool, right? If the candidate has a break in the career, we somehow tend to dismiss the candidate, right? Or we feel that something is wrong. We may not want to hire the person. I think this is the single most thing, personally, I believe that, we should stop doing, because the candidate may have had a lived experience, childcare, medical emergency, studies. So, whatever that might be, I think it is important for us to sit down and understand why the gaps have been, and try and be understanding of how that can, create an impact for you from their own lived experiences. So, I think personally, don't dismiss a person if somebody has a career gap. It's very, very important for us to acknowledge that, because in today's world, where work and life is integrated so much, it is going to be imperative that at some point in time somebody has a career gap, right? Otherwise, if you keep dismissing people, you will seldom find good talent. So that's my take of it.
All right. Uh,
So Amit, you had two sections in the question. One is for the recruiter and one is for the HR
yeah.
people, right?
Yeah.
For the recruiters, one thing what I want to tell is your networking skills, right? Your network is your net worth, according to me. So there needs to be good networking across, right? And second thing is have good relation, develop these relations, the early recruiters, with the candidates, with the hiring manager, with generally friends and your colleagues. This will help a lot to actually, enhance and build the database what you have, and bring in the candidates whomever you want, right? And update yourself. All the recruiters, please make sure that you update every single, day there is something new which is happening, something new which is coming up, right? And please update yourself, update, relearn, unlearn, right? These are all the things what the recruiter has to be, he has.
How would one update themselves
So
if they're like burdened with like a lot of like day-to-day tasks?
see, it is. See, there has to be a certain time to update yourself, or else you are not going to stay relevant. in the industry. Updating is extremely important, especially recruitment. It is something like, the most crucial thing in any organization. If a person who's coming today, I'm using like, probably something like a Python or something, but tomorrow I'm using something else, right? Like, so the recruiters being updated, if they are not updated, they surely cannot work to the organization goal, right? And it is also upgrading themselves. So that is second one what I tell. Third one is like, make sure that you have a regular updation on technology. That's very, very important today, right? Like as a recruiter, right? And today, like, surely it is, it's much easier and it is faster for recruiter because the technology is in place. There is AI, like, based tools, there is ATS, lot of things, right? Like, so people can utilize that. But until unless you update yourself on technology, it is little difficult, right? So these are few things for the recruitment people what I feel. For the HRBPs, the early HRBPs, right? So two three things what I have. One is like, always have a mentor, right? From a very young age, early career, always have a mentor. It becomes very easy to, a mentor need not have to be physically sitting opposite to you. Like, wherever the mentor is, right? It can be in HR, it can be in some government service or anywhere, right? But have a mentor. And that becomes like, you start looking up to the person and you start like, thinking that I want to become somebody like that. So that is one. Second is as an HR, right? Like, empathy and listening skills is extremely important. So you go and sit and listen to an employee problem, half the issue is already solved, right? So the empathy needs to be like, something which is, if it's not inborn, at least like, you should nurture that, right? And the final thing is, I think HRBP should also know that they are just not enablers. Please, let's get out of this. We have done that part of being just the enablers. Today HR is sitting in the like, in the boardroom, right? They have a place in boardroom. So we need to have that status quo, and policies are not necessary always to be followed. We can break a policy if it is required for an employee, according to me. So these are the kind of things what they have to nurture themselves in the early career. And I'm sure like, they can make a great career out of HR and recruitment.
One thing, if
Yeah,
I can add,
yeah, yeah,
extension
yeah.
to what Asha said, I think if they want to be good HR people, I think the understanding of business also becomes very important.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's just going to be a tick in the box, right? You're
Mhm.
just filling positions and talking to people. If you really want to create that strategic impact, I think understanding business becomes important. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
I
I
think
think,
my follow up to that was exactly this,
yeah.
which is not like, for example, there is a uh, let's say like a technical, like how much, like you mentioned that recruiters, while they're they should be updated with technology. Let's say they're like technical recruiters, they're hiring for a role of uh, Django or Python. So now, like for example, how much depth should one recruiter go into and do that? Because clearly so they're not going to exactly like use a programming language. They would probably read about it. How much depth should they actually should a good recruiter go into in each of these when they're trying to understand the business requirement or understanding the requirement? uh,
So
should
okay,
they really, like, is it really that important?
so, Amit, when I tell technology, right, it need not have to be like, Python. I know the entire coding in Python, right? It's not necessary that. So, for example, there is a ATS tool and there is a search engine which we are using presently. As I told you previously also, every 3 months they come back to us telling that there is a new feature which we have developed in this. Now, if I am not a technology driven person or I don't understand technology at all, I'll not be able to update myself,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
I have to
yeah,
upgrade
yeah.
myself.
That's one part of it.
Yeah.
So yes,
Yeah.
like
To
that is
your
it. The
question,
other part is like understanding business.
your
So
your your question, understand the basic business, right? There are a lot of nuances to that, not necessary that like, exact. And there are recruiters, Like, there are recruiters who understand the entire nuances of the business, right? And who can code, in fact. They're very passionate about it, right? That's a great thing, cherry on the cake. But if in case you can understand and ask basic questions, which actually mitigates the issue of pushing the profile to the manager and then coming back with a rejection. If in case you can do the first round of shortlisting, right, with few keywords, whether the person has used those Django or anything, right, whether the person has used that and how many projects has he used in, right, that becomes very easy actually, right? So those are the kind of things, and a basic smartness.
Move on to my final question, which is, what one advice would you give to job applicants which people would not expect coming from an HR professional?
Okay. So I would, so job searching, right, is a very tedious job. It's a very strenuous for anybody, right? Like, the anticipation and not getting a job, it's very frustrating. In fact, within my friends, I've seen a lot of them really becoming sick and not able to get something what they want, and financial problems. There are a lot of things what are attached to a job, right? Not getting the right kind of job, not happy with the kind of manager what they have, or the salary, or maybe the place, the distance, location. Lot of things are included in this. So my very strong advice as a senior, this one, right, who has seen the entire evolution, that please take care of yourself while you are looking for a job. Nobody expects this from an HR, but I'm just this one, that please take care of your mental and physical well-being while you're doing this. Yes, there is a delay, but you will get
Any
what you're
tips on
looking
how
at.
to go about doing that? Because like it is a very difficult journey. Like there's so many rejections, and for a lot of people, like they're not used to rejections. So
Yeah,
yeah.
it's basically you will need to keep a little bit calm, and you have to be very, very positive, right? A person I've seen many a times, you lose hope, there is nothing else. And you need to believe that magic. And magic does happen if you believe and work towards it,
And you
right?
only need like one yes, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
one
Yeah.
yes out of 100 no's, right? It will happen. So keep a bit of calmness, and do your physical exercises, and do something like a yoga, or maybe a run, or a walk, or gym, whatever you want, right? You have your, the best physical form actually reflects on your mental form, right? Or on your mind, on your holistic well-being. So keep yourself fit, and eat well, and sleep, and I'm sure there is a yes end of the, there is always light end of the tunnel, right? And there's a lot of thousands of job, and it's a huge open canvas. Go paint your stuff, right? So I suggest this for all the people who are toiling, looking out, and who are struggling to get a job.
Nivedita.
I can't beat what she said. I think that's huge
Yeah.
shoes to fill. But I think I read this somewhere in LinkedIn post, and I think that's very, very important, Tasha. I think thank you for bringing this up, because I think in today's age, I think the pressure of everything around takes a toll on well-being, right? So I think that's a very beautiful tip that she has. So I have nothing else to add beyond that.
All right. On that note, thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing great insights. It was a blast having you on.
Thanks a lot,
Been a
Amit.
Thank you.
Thanks for having
Sure,
us.
it's been a
Thank you.
pleasure. Thank you so much,
Thank you
Amit.
so much. Are you struggling to hire talent? At Weekday, we have built a database of 80% of white collar workforce with their email, phone number, resume, and salary details. And you can send automated email plus WhatsApp plus call sequences to them. Yes, we call candidates on your behalf as well. Because India runs on WhatsApp and calls, we end up getting as high as 40% response rate. Gone are the days of sending a LinkedIn invite and waiting for days for someone to accept. Just use Weekday. Whether you are looking for a database to supercharge the productivity of your recruiters, or you're looking at a complete AI recruiter to do everything for you, we have a solution for you. Visit weekday.works to know more.